What's something you saw as a kid but didn't realize was messed up until you were older? Growing up, I thought my dad was the most generous man alive because desperate people would come to our house at all hours and he'd always help them with money. He'd hand out thick rolls of cash to crying adults who would hug him like he'd saved their lives, promising to pay him back real soon. I remember being 8 years old when Mrs. Garcia from down the street showed up at our door at midnight, sobbing and clutching her baby. Dad invited her into our kitchen, listened to her story about needing rent money, and counted out several $100 bills from his jacket pocket. She thanked him over and over, calling him an angel. I felt so proud watching my father help people when they had nowhere else to turn. These visits happened constantly. Strangers would knock on our door looking desperate, sometimes bringing their kids along. Dad would take them into his study, and they'd leave looking relieved, even smiling. I thought he was running some kind of informal charity from our house. He kept detailed records in black notebooks, writing down names, amounts, and dates. I'd peek over his shoulder and see pages filled with numbers and calculations. I assumed he was just being organized about his good deeds, tracking how much help he'd given to each family. When people couldn't pay him back quickly, Dad would visit their houses. He always brought Uncle Tony along on these trips. I thought Uncle Tony was there for company, maybe to help carry groceries or gifts for the struggling families. Dad would get serious phone calls during dinner, speaking in low tones about payment schedules and deals. I figured he was just checking in on the people he'd helped, making sure they were doing okay. The money kept our family comfortable. Nice house, new cars, private school tuition. I assumed Dad had some high-paying job I didn't understand, maybe in banking or finance since he was always dealing with money. One evening when I was 12, I heard shouting outside our house. Through my bedroom window, I watched two men arguing with my father in our driveway. One man was crying, begging for more time. Dad stayed calm, but firm, with Uncle Tony standing silently beside him. I thought they were just emotional about how grateful they were for Dad's help. Everything shattered when I was 13. I came home from soccer practice to find police cars everywhere and my mother screaming on our front lawn. My father was lying motionless in our driveway with wounds to his chest. The police investigation revealed everything. Those black notebooks weren't charity records. They documented illegal loans with crushing interest rates. The desperate midnight visitors weren't receiving help. They were trapped in debt cycles that destroyed their lives. Uncle Tony wasn't there for moral support. He was the enforcer who made sure people paid up, using whatever methods necessary. My generous, kind-hearted father had been a loan shark who preyed on desperate families. Mrs. Garcia hadn't been saved that night. She'd been enslaved to a debt she could never escape. The crying man in our driveway hadn't been grateful. He'd been terrified. Someone finally decided they'd had enough of my father's brand of generosity. I never learned the identity of whoever ended his life, but after reading those notebooks, I understood their desperation.